I would say welcome to everybody to the Fox Selling System webinar series. This is the fifth one in a five webinar series session. We've repeated it. This is the second half of the year, and so this is our last one until 2022. Yesterday, Sean shared some of our ideas and what we're intending in 2022, rather. And I think you're going to like it because we're adding some additional content. We're adding different topics that we're going to be covering, and we're taking a different approach with the time of day that that these live training events are going to occur. And when we have it all completed, which we should be by mid-December, we're going to publish it and we'll let everybody know. But until that time, we still have to finish this one. And so I appreciate all of your attendance and those of you who may be watching us at a later date via archives. So as you know, we have the fearless leader, Tom Fox, as our primary host, and Tom Fox, his middle child, graduate of Michigan, University of Michigan. He's a big fan of theirs, and he's a pretty avid golfer, for those of you who don't know. What is your handicap, Sean, usually?
Like a 3, 4.
I think that's pretty good. But however, it's not good enough to beat his father in the Fox Open. So I'm going to
go green. How about the go green in there? Go green.
Hey, now.
You got scoreboard on us, Tracy. You got scoreboard.
Yeah. Well, you don't have the college football playoff ranking on us. So anyways, I'm going to leave it at that and turn it over to Tom Fox.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Sean. And good morning, everybody. We know it's a little bit of a smaller group than normal. We kind of anticipated that. So we do look forward to having some dialogue as we go through, but really want to jump into obviously a very important topic. And it's really all around how do we deliver the presentation and deliver it in a way that's, highly customer focused, highly, confident. And what would drive someone's confidence I believe it's all based on your, understanding of how you can help that account. If we know how much we can help the account, I would imagine the level of confidence skyrockets, and then the level of influence we might have would commensurately skyrocket as well. And we probably don't spend enough time on this. There's been quotes I've thrown out there over the years and really getting into this idea that it's easier to calculate analysis than it is to articulate analysis. The other quote I love from Albert Einstein was, if you can't explain it, meaning data, to a 6-year-old, if you can't break it down into concepts that a 6-year-old can understand, then you don't know it well enough yourself. So I love both of those quotes. I believe in those quotes. I just don't know how much people think about the idea of delivering it in a way that really gets a lot of that accomplished, versus the idea of like, well, my buyers typically don't demand, a whole lot. We can present the data, I can ask for the order, and I think something's missing when we ultimately do that. So really excited. So this quote, Jim, I do, and Sean, I really do like this. This objective, just the idea, we're always trying to increase the level of influence that we have. So at this point, we've obviously done the analysis. Webinar 2 talked about identifying opportunities. Webinar 3 got into creating solutions. 4 talked about building the deck. 5 is about presenting it. And a big part of presenting, and I don't know how many people really have this high on their radar, would be the idea that we're going to collaborate. It's not just presenting, it's collaborating, which means that there's high level of involvement with our customer. And again, I would imagine that it's probably common for that not to happen. The buyers are probably not, driving this idea that they want to be collaborated with, and yet they all do want to be collaborated with, but they're probably not going out of their way to showcase that. So it's going to be something that we have to, really be curious. This whole idea, we aren't going to get into empathy at all today, but this idea that I want to know what your opinion is, it's a huge part of the presentation of that. And then the whole idea, again, I love this quote, this idea that we always talk about when we, how do you get better at selling? Well, we uncover Sprite needs and we deliver Sprite benefits. And the more we can kind of pound that nail, the better off our customer recognizes how much we can help them. And so Winston puts it a way that I can't. And he talks about this pile driver, making a tremendous whack. It's going to leave an impression. And that's what we're trying to do. And I wonder how many times someone presenting, wouldn't look at it this way. And therefore, the point they're trying to make is way more subtle. And that transfer of knowledge doesn't happen. I think that that's really important. In this case here, when you really think about it, what needs to be whacked is our benefit and how it aligns with their goals. If we can whack that enough, I mean, that's going to stand out. And we talk about this on a normal selling basis, but really the stakes, Jim, increase when you're calling on chains. So if we're not doing it this way, I'm fearful that a lot of presentations kind of look the same and roll the same, and our level of influence is minimized.
Well, yeah, and I think that that's true in terms of, I'm going to put it in a different way. When you talk about training and the ability for people to have the training that we're presenting really stick, you mentioned the exposure to the content and that the mastery of it increases with frequent exposures. And I don't see it any different in terms of matching the benefits to the Sprite need. It's the very same concept. And with that repetitiveness, not only that, you become more confident in the content that you're presenting. If you know you're going over and there's a point you're trying to make and you're repeating it without sounding obnoxious in the way you do it, then I think that your chances of really getting the attention of the buyer increases dramatically.
I would love just to, Keith or Matt or Tracy, when you look at that quote, would you say that, geez, yeah, I get it, this is exactly what I do? Or is there maybe an opportunity for us to maybe make those points a little stronger? What are people's thoughts?
I definitely do this. I typically start out right away with 3 buckets. These are the 3 priorities that we've been working on throughout the year. Boom, boom, boom. Here's the data. Then we kind of go in and dive a little bit deeper and hit that point again. And then I come back in the summary and hit it again. So they're minimally hearing like about Seagram's Estates variety pack models, for example, minimally 3 times. And then I'm always checking in with them, well, what are you seeing, or what are your thoughts, or, what do you think we could do better? And that's all stuff that I've learned in some of your previous classes, is kind of making sure they're engaged, but then making sure, do you get it now? And I've noticed, and even Kevin has noticed, I think in the last couple of buyer meetings that we've had, they're coming forward. Oh yes, we're seeing that in the data too. And that's huge.
That's huge.
It's huge.
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you, Tracy. Keith or Matt, any thoughts from you? Is this an opportunity?
Well, it's a greater opportunity. I think Tracy and I, she could corroborate this. So one of these initiatives that we've had to add corporately with our new VP of sales, we do these sales call plans now. And before every buyer meeting, we put together these sales call plans, and they may or may not be in lockstep with our presentations. And as I'm thinking this through, I would love to see a sort of a next step. Let's take some Fox Selling System terminology, things like this, and integrate them into this sales call plan that we're doing. Mm-hmm. I think that would be really useful. What do you think?
Great idea.
Well, I mean, would there be any benefit of sharing that outline with us? And,
I think so.
and us providing some feedback on how, some suggestion. I know Tom would definitely have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think the whole SMART goal planning is probably consistent with what their call plan is. There's some similarities. We've thought about trying to add that resource in to the Fox Selling System, which I think would be a nice upgrade.
Yeah, I'll mention that to Kevin, and next time you guys check in with Kevin, I think there would be a lot of value in that, because I feel like we're doing these great things with you guys. And then there's just sort of this random plan that we
Mhm.
have that we put together that may or may not be speaking the same language.
Well, no, that's good. Hey, Keith, welcome. We are so delighted to have you today. Any thoughts on the quote?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to an old cliche that I remember hearing in the industry is tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That is really it. So Keith, I don't mean to go off topic here, but I am a daily Keurig guy. And the pod or the pods I like are these donut house. And I'm not sure what side you're on. You might be on a completely different side of it, but there are this donut house chocolate glazed donut that I don't think they make anymore. And I have to go on Amazon and I have to spend like double because someone's obviously stockpiled a bunch and I'll pay whatever. But anyway, I love your system. I've got it one in my office. I got 3 of them.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm taking notes on stockpiling the flavors moving forward to do that. I'm on the cold side. I work with
You are.
non-alcoholic cocktail
Okay.
mixers.
Okay. Is Chris Williams involved in that?
Not that I'm familiar with. I've only been with the
Okay.
company about 6 months though.
Okay. Well, welcome. We're delighted to have you.
Thank
And
you.
I think you guys got a pretty good little mousetrap there on the cocktail side. That's pretty cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. Good stuff. So again, if you think about a litmus test, and I would really encourage all of you to think about whenever you build a presentation, and even as you're delivering that presentation, throw it up against this little litmus test. Are we presenting it in a way that looks like it's really all about the customer? That would make it more about the object, the category versus your portfolio. And then as you're presenting the data, the fact-based element isn't so much that we've got facts as much as it is, are they identifying opportunities? And most importantly, are we collaborating to make sure the customer tells us it's an opportunity? Data always points to gaps. There's 4 gaps that we want to understand, potentially what is the situation with this account, and we can explain it when we look at the numbers, but just because we can explain it, we have to be able to explain it with a question mark. We want to get their opinion on the situation to see what they would improve about the situation. Then and only then have you really identified an opportunity. So from a delivery standpoint, that is the key. And then when you're offering up your solutions, which is really no different than what you're trying to sell. This is when you are selling. But when you're selling, we still want you to present it, because that's the topic today. We want you to present it in a way that speaks to how your solution closes the gap that we identified earlier in terms of their situation or just some of the opportunity gaps. So we're still selling, and we're going to hopefully even have more influence with what we're trying to sell and get accomplished, but we're going to do it in a way as we present it to make it cover off on these 3 bullet points, which I think is so important. And within that, you think about the chapters to the story. And really, I think what Keith said, I've heard people say that before, and I think it makes sense. Tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them. We want to start that kind of off with tell them what's going on, not so much as a way to educate. This is one of the things we'll get into. But when we're presenting it, it's always about context. I don't want the context to be in a way where it looks as if we're trying to educate them. And what I mean by that is I think you have to assume that your customers kind of understand what's going on. We're not trying to point anything out that they may or may not know. We just want to get their opinion. We want to get their opinion on it. So our presentation approach isn't about education. It's always about collaboration. So I'm not presenting this to I know you know what's going on, but what I don't know is how you feel about what's going on. What's your opinion around what's going on? And then as you start getting into the why, it'll be very self-evident, because why it's going on and how we can solve it, when you think about our solutions, are always going to tie right back to what's going on. So as we tell that story within these chapters, it's highly customer focused, because it's everything you've said is at a bigger picture level, and yet your solutions still tie back to what you're trying to sell. and the productivity that you're trying to garner. Does that make sense? So on that, let's have a little discussion, and again, this is not anything like a poll or any true or false, but I would love to get your opinion. When you present category, segment, whatever levels of the category that you're presenting, do you think that they really understand? Are they aware of what's going on? I know that probably varies by account, but just by and large, do your customers know what's going on? Or are you in need of educating them, or is it not about education? It's more about collaboration. What do you all think?
Just a virtual poll or a discussion point?
Just a discussion. Yeah. I figured we'd have a few or less people, Matt, so I figured we just would discuss it.
I'm gonna be the anti Tracy here, because I only have maybe 10% of my accounts are tracked syndicated data accounts.
Okay.
I was just having this discussion with our new category management team this week. Majority of my buyers, we are providing a ton of value add to them because they do not know. They are in charge of multiple categories. They're chickens without heads. They're not, a 7-Eleven buyer who is only working on bev alc in one territory. They are managing alc, non-alc, tobacco, lottery. They've got all this crap going on. They rely on us for data and insights to be experts and then distill the information to them. And we need to do a better job distilling that information and providing it to them on a plate, so that they can easily get snapshots of what's going on in their business. That's what I see with my regional accounts, where these folks have too much going on. So there is a little bit of education needed. And it's funny because I do have the one or two where it's not that case, and it's such a difference.
Well, I think you make a good point. If we are dealing with portfolio level information, because the only thing we can present them is internal data, yeah, I would agree. I don't know how they could understand their performance and their development with each supplier. That would be really a high, that would be unreasonable. So I think that's a good point. If you're dealing with internal data, it is part education, but not education in any way that makes them feel like they don't understand, but just, hey, this is what's happening. You probably have your eye on the bigger picture here, but when you look at each supplier, and then in particular our situation, here's what's going on, and here's where there's some demand that maybe you're not capturing, which is of course is opportunity. So I think that's a good point, Matt. I think internal data would be unreasonable to assume that they know that. So that there is some education going on there for sure.
And to the point of sharing regional IRI data, because they aren't subscribing, and this is what's happening in your geography. This is what's happening because they don't have CRMA data, and this is what's happening in this region, over this time period. Here's the winners, here's the losers. You want to be, on trend, and you're missing out here, you're on point here, etc.
Good. Yeah, good stuff. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm finding in the drug segment, because let's face it, it's been an ongoing declining segment. I think FIFCO has a really unique opportunity here, because it has really recently come to my attention by one of my biggest buyers that he's not receiving external data like IRI from competition like I would assume he would. Huh. So it's, we're having those weekly discussions when IRI is updated for us, and it's to the point where he's now sharing his internal data even with competitive information. He's sending me what he's seeing on his end, and now he's asked for more data. Let's start these discussions, and I was just shocked. So it kind of goes back. My realm of thinking is that I want to be the biggest, smallest company in the eyes of my buyers. I want to be the first person they think of when they need analysis done. And I don't want them coming to me. I want to be able to provide it to them and have them come back to me saying, this is great. Let's also look at this. And that's really helped over the last few months, I think. Once that came to my realization, it's like, I think a lot of the bigger guys have pretty much given up. They're doing what they need to do to get the distribution, and then they're not sending in post recaps on programming. They're not having the data discussions. So we're in a very unique situation. That's why I keep pushing back on my team, and my management. We cannot give up.
Right, right.
It's low hanging fruit in my eyes right now. So yeah. So it's education for both of us, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Jim, I mean, Tracy seems so nice that, I mean, I look at Michigan, all my obnoxious Michigan State friends, and yet she seems so nice. And it's hard to get mad at Tracy when she's,
It's an anomaly.
yeah,
It absolutely is. And
Somebody is going there, so I have to support them.
well,
no, I love it.
the father of my granddaughters and new grandson is a graduate, so I can't, I have to, I love my grandkids, so there's a limit to
Yeah,
it.
his son-in-law played for the team. He was all Big Ten player. So,
Yeah.
But aside from that, backgrounds aside, thinking about what both Matt and Tracy commented on with regards to the relationship and the buyers and the different scenarios. I mean, that up and down the street, calling on accounts that don't use syndicated data, it's not available to them. That is, to me, a challenge. And I think it's one of our biggest opportunities, and it has been for a long time within this industry. The more we can collaborate and bring fact-based solutions to people who don't have access to the data, I think really elevates our relationship with them. And I'm not talking about relationship selling, but that relationship where, Tracy, as you mentioned, they're coming back to you on that. That's one. I see this as a huge opportunity. And then the other part of it is considering the environment we're in. COVID has put pressure on the entire world. And if it comes down to whatever business that we happen to be in this particular case, in the beverage alcohol business, everybody has more on their plate, it seems, than than pre-COVID. People are stretched thin. And I think that creates even a greater opportunity. So while we all might be stretched in terms of the time we have, and I know, Tom, we're off topic, and this is more of a prep talk, but having the opportunity to present data that you've taken the time to kind of call in mind, I think can pay huge dividends in a time where others, the buyer in this case, hasn't taken the time to see it. I mean, how often do buyers switch too, where they're maybe not as familiar with all of the data that they have? And we have access to so much data that it really becomes difficult to go through all of it. So, if we know we're identifying gaps in 4 different areas, that's pretty narrow focus, right, Tom? I mean, we're not
totally
identifying gaps in 30 areas, 4 areas. And if we can present that in that way to them, I think you're really doing a service and enhancing your chances of being the person. I think you would be the person, the smallest, best company. How did you put that, Tracy? The smallest company.
Biggest, smallest company.
Biggest, smallest company, yeah.
Love that.
That's what I try to present myself as. Even though my feet aren't touching the floor, my feet, when I'm sitting all the way back in my chair, my feet are not touching the floor, all right? But I still think I still imagine that they do.
That is hilarious. So I love this here, and I think the discussion has been great because I don't really think it matters whether we're educating or simply collaborating. The fact is, when we present the what's going on information, it's information that really can't be debated. This is what's going on. But then when we process that and say, okay, well, this is what we think you should do about it, of course, that is going to be debated because your competitors are going to have the same information that can't be debated, but their solutions are likely going to be vastly different than ours. And that's when the whole, the sales acumen comes into play, that we can, speak to what's going on and how our solutions can solve those at a compelling level in ways that our competition doesn't necessarily or won't necessarily do. So I think that's important to point out, that when we're presenting to what's going on, you know, we're not worried about what that is. I mean, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but it doesn't really matter. You know, there's 4 scenarios. We'll get into that shortly. It doesn't matter what scenario it falls into. You know, all that matters is that we can explain that this is the situation. Now, what's your opinion on that? Because when they give us their opinion, the hope is that they're going to have energy against that and say, yeah, I'd like to close that gap. That would be a gap we would like to close. Whatever that gap is worth, we can quantify it, and then our solutions can hopefully solve a subset of that, and we can, you know, have obviously some great dialogue there. So when you think about all these different things about storytelling, obviously the first thing we always have to do is hopefully reconfirm customer goals, not just confirm. If you don't know their goals, well, you couldn't get a better time than right now, starting to ask about 2022 goals. Can't beat the timing. And then we can go ahead and then put that on the second page of our presentation. And as we present it, one of the first things we want to do from a business rapport standpoint is uncover and confirm their goal. But what I hope it looks like, Jim and Sean, is that it's more about reconfirming, because we've already uncovered it. And now all we're doing is continuing to mention it, which again is the root of objectivity. And then as you start getting into the data, you look at their situation, we look for the gaps, and then we collaborate on that. So here's all the gaps, you know, based on what you mentioned, you were trying to increase sales. Well, we've identified some gaps that can close, you know, over $1 million of potential revenue. I imagine that would be compelling, or it would be an opportunity for you. Is that accurate? Is that right? You know, again, question mark. And then as we start getting into our solutions, again, we tie it back. We tie back our solution, you know, right back to that opportunity. They are one and the same. It's a subset of the other. You know, the opportunity identification is really all about the customer. The solutions are really all about us, but we can't present it that way. We got to present it in a way where it looks like it's seamless, that our solutions tie back to a subset of closing of that bigger opportunity gap. You know, and then obviously a big part of that analysis identifies just what that solution is going to be worth from a revenue standpoint. And if we want to back into the profit, you know, we can do that too. Again, all depending on what their KPIs are. And then the other thing too, which is not so much to do with presentation delivery, although it has a major impact on how we present, is how we create and construct slides. Again, proper title, proper takeaways can be a godsend in terms of aiding the key account person on how they present the data. I mean, it's game changing if we can construct the titles and takeaways effectively. It tells the story for us. And it's really a great best practice that I really would encourage everyone to do. So just getting into each of these pretty quickly, you know, the first step again was confirming, or what I would even call reconfirming. And, you know, I imagine, you know, Tracy and Matt, you probably have Karma, or I think do you have Karma?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I imagine there's probably fields that you could populate within Karma that indicate each of your customers' KPIs. You know, that should be just standard procedure, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't this be a part of that call planner? I mean, I would think that.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Matt earlier, or not necessarily?
I would hope.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's there. It's you know, not as you know, maybe not as intuitively there, but yeah, it's there.
Okay.
So other, you know, so beyond just some of the major KPIs, even, you know, any of their, it really kind of ties back to Sprite, quite frankly, you know, whether it's sales or profit or an average ring, or if they're trying to generate more traffic with the category, you know, whatever it is, that does become the theme. We should be mentioning how anything we're talking about, whether it's identifying gaps, presenting our solutions, how it always ties back to their KPIs. It just has to be how we do it. It has to be.
You know,
So
I always, you know, have some difficulty with some of these guys getting that information. What are some of the best tactics or best questions? Because again, we're, yeah, the couple of bigger guys that have syndicated data, that have more complex categories, they have that and they'll share that. But the other ones that, are running everything in the store that's not gas, getting them to admit to anything other than more sales and and increasing their dollaring is really hard to get. And I'm sort of jealous when, there's accounts and account managers that have, specific KPIs with their buyers that they can then go back to and scorecard against.
Yeah, I really, I think a couple things, Matt. I'm not surprised to hear that some accounts might be holding some of that close to the vest, if you will, not because of anything that you would have done, but just some people are cynical. They don't trust vendors, and so we're having to fight that. Again, not any fault of ours, but that's just how a lot of them, are, culturally trained that way to have, arm's length with a lot of their vendors. So we have to try to work through that. But again, it was nothing that we would have done. It would have been, previous generations, quite frankly, of distrust and frankly, not collaborative or consultative approaches would have led to a more dysfunctional relationship. So if someone's not going to tell you, then I certainly wouldn't take that personal. But there are ways to try to subtly talk about how they evaluate the category, what criteria they would use. So for example, and again, I think the time of the year right now, you could not get a better one. And if you don't even have an appointment set up for some of your accounts until maybe the first of the year, I would still send a note. You probably have some holiday greeting you're going to send. Hey, wishing you a great, as you think about 2022, what are some of the goals that are kind of hitting your radar? The more you can share with me, the more we can assist with coming up with solutions that can align with where you're trying to take the category. That couldn't be more well-intended. And if someone processes that and still elects not to give it to you, again, I don't know that there's a whole lot you can do about it, but any of those questions, simply, hey, what are your KPIs for the category? Or when you think about assortment and when you think about these resets, what are some of the outputs? Like, what are some of the things you're trying to get accomplished with these decisions on what you're going to carry? Are going to go right back to some of the metrics that we can solve for. Make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's been successful to a point, but I would love to get deeper. And that's been my challenge is getting deeper, and getting those KPIs. And to be honest, I feel like some of them may not even have them.
And they might not. They might not. I'm sure some of the regional accounts are not as sophisticated as some of the others. Yeah, but even at that point, there's still probably something, even if it's not formal, they might still have saying, this, all my boss ever talks to you, what do they talk to you about? Like, what are some of the things they're challenging you with? Even if it's not formal, there's usually something that keeps them up at night, something they'd like to improve. And in the cases where we don't have any of that, I think at that point we just sell benefits. Yeah. If someone doesn't give you needs, just sell benefits. Some of them might.
I've been doing a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think that's really that's putting your best foot forward.
Or create the KPIs for them, for us. That's what I've done with some of my accounts is, I'm used to being on site, so I'm used to seeing definitive numbers when I would ask for KPIs. Yeah, we're going to be up 2% or this and this. Now that I'm not on site, it's very blanketed. It's very generic. But how I kind of set it up, Matt, is when I was doing my presentations for next spring, it's like, okay, before we kind of move forward, what are going to be your KPIs and what's going to be helping you drive the business next year? What are some of the things you're going to do? Because that only helps me come to you with relevant programming. I don't want to waste your time. I want to make sure I'm fishing where I need to fish. And you'd be surprised how that starts them talking.
I bet.
It really does. Because I was like, oh, because it's like as soon as I say I don't want to waste your time with unnecessary programming or programming that you're just gonna, it's not what we need, it catches them.
Right. No, absolutely. And I love that. That's a great, well, and that's great. That's how you built trust and obviously have built the rapport with a lot of your customers, which is going to absolutely pay off. So Jim, I don't know why I don't use this slide more often, but I absolutely love this slide. Just this idea of, okay, what is the situation? It could be for the FIFCO portfolio. It could be for their category. It could be for the FMB segment. It could be for craft. It could be for anything. It could be for anything. So whether we have internal data or syndicated data, we are always going to have, let's take an example. Let's say we're looking at 12 packs within FMBs. We want to understand what is the situation, because let's just assume if we get behind one of our suggestions is going to be, we're going to try to get some FMB 12-pack placements or a FMB 12-pack placement. Let's understand what's going on with FMB 12 packs. They can only be in one of these four quadrants. I mean, it's going to be one of these four. Is that segment outperforming the competition? Is it underperforming? Are they getting a greater share of that particular pack type within that segment, or are they not getting their fair share? It's going to be one of those four scenarios: well-developed, underperforming; well-developed, outperforming; underdeveloped, underperforming; underdeveloped, outperforming. That can only be one of those four. And the good news is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what scenario it is, because we can identify an opportunity no matter what scenario it is. If someone is well developed and outperforming that upper right quadrant, you might think to yourself, ooh, everything's going really well, there's no opportunity. Well, if they want to maintain it or even expand it, that's an opportunity. You know, the one in the bottom left might seem like the obvious one: underperforming, underdeveloped. But sometimes the segments that fall in that bottom left quadrant, they might be going, listen, we're not doing well in that, and we don't care. An example there might be, premium beer, economy priced beer. They might not be thinking that those segments are strategic. And so they're not performing well, and we're okay with it.
Every buyer tells me that.
Right. And I think just a bit, and again, Matt, I've been doing this a long time, and Jim, you have too. There was a day where the premium segment was all that mattered to the retailer. It's all that mattered. And boy, how much has changed. And it's not like it doesn't matter. If you're in the, where Tracy, where you are, I mean, Labatt Blue and Blue Light are still really important brands. And, that chunk of the business, when you compare it with the other mainstream beers, Bud and Bud Light, Coors and Coors Light, Miller Light, still makes up, gosh, it's got to be close to half the business, right? I mean, that's a lot of business. Do you need, hold on one second.
Trouble.
Mom's in trouble.
Talking too loudly.
You in the wrong room?
I'm in a room. I guess it's the wrong room. Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yes.
Try whispering and see what happens.
I'm whispering.
Okay, good.
How's that?
I think you're fine. Hey, Tom.
Hold on one second. Hi.
It would be great if security guards came right now.
Nah.
Grabbed them underneath each arm, lifted them up.
Out of here.
That's funny.
Are the police on the way, Tom? Okay, good. Wow. While you were muted, I sent you a Zoom invite so we can talk about that slide that you're not presenting very often, because you asked me, you said, Jim, I don't know why I don't use this slide more often. And I have a lot of ideas why you might not, but I think we're going to do it offline at a Zoom meeting. I've got about 17 or 18 different reasons why I think you're not using that slide. Okay.
Can't explain it. Yeah, it's
So you see that invite, that's what it's about.
I love this slide. I just love it. But Matt and Tracy, how often are you like explaining the situation where you're using this exact verbiage? Is this kind of how you do it?
Absolutely. Especially like for us in Matt sees it in upstate New York too, is that we're on a roll with Labatt Blue Light, for example, and you can show that we're outperforming not only the segment, but we're outperforming the competition, but yet we're underdeveloped. We may not have as much distribution as competition, but yet our dollars per store outpace them. We're outpacing the category. We're even in some cases outpacing the industry. So it's, yeah, and our analytical team does an amazing job putting together sell sheets for us that explains that very easily, in a nice chart that's boom, it's right in your face. You can't deny it.
And to my point earlier about us having to educate, so with accounts that don't have the syndicated data, they may see that, they may not see that. So I'm taking these insights that we're getting from our syndicated accounts in upstate New York, and I'm sharing that with the buyer, saying, hey, just so you know, this is what's happening in the greater market. And Labatt is taking share from Bud Miller Coors. It is growing faster than the category. It is sort of defying the category right now. And that's a nice story because they're in a bubble and they don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic use of syndicated data for accounts that don't have it. I mean, that's what else can you do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Flip side, I just met with a buyer last week who in his directions to his suppliers, and he had like a bunch of bullet points on what he wants to see and doesn't want to see. He specifically said, I do not want to see any IRI data. I don't give a crap. I will throw it out.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's what we get. We get a nice range.
Just walk in with tickets to the Buffalo Sabres game or something. And
He was down in Southern Ohio. So
okay. Hey, Tom, on this chart, I mean, I'm just thinking about it and from a template standpoint of you talked about slides being able to, when you show it, it's just crystal clear what it is. And I could see using a slide like this and, just expanding the box a little bit and put in what is underperforming. I mean, you could add where you have identified these. You can have the slide, previous slide, here's where I got this data. But here, just so it's easier to see, and you have it right there. To me, you could explain that to a 6-year-old.
Great idea. So you're saying that within each of these quadrants, you would put like premium segment, underdeveloped, underperforming,
Yep.
FMBs,
Yeah.
well-developed. I like that.
Yeah.
I've even gone so far as putting SKUs in.
yes, that's what I was in my mind. That's what I was saying.
15 packs, whatever. I do that. And like to your point, it's very simple, easy to read, and it's a great takeaway slide. And I'll even put like some type of notation. If there's one slide or one thing you take away from this presentation, it's
Yes.
on this slide right here.
Mm-hmm. So that goes back to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them again.
Exactly.
I like that
Well,
comment, Tom, by the way.
yeah, it's a great one. I definitely heard that before too. It's excellent. So obviously we populate a lot of this and do the analysis from, and this is part of the presentation development piece, but as far as where do we identify that? So this is obviously by segment. We can do that, by style. We can do it by pack size. So there's no shortage of ways we can look at the category and certainly be able to, kind of then tell that part of the story, that first part. But how hard is it to collaborate? Like when you present this, even if we're presenting it to educate versus presenting it to collaborate, how hard is that? Has that been something that you all have gotten more comfortable with? Or is it something you've always been comfortable with? Because I've seen so many presentations where it's one way. It's not collaborative at all. And this part here is useless if it's not collaborative.
I think that goes back to just establishing that relationship with the buyer. I know like the first couple, 3 meetings I usually have with a new buyer or, with a new account, it's pretty one-sided. But then as you start developing that relationship, it definitely becomes a two-way street and you kind of force it,
Mhm.
what are you seeing or, is competition, what is competition saying or what are you seeing out in the streets? I mean, kind of put them on the spot. Well, what is competition telling you? And that's when you find out not really anything. It's like, oh, really? Like, okay. I mean,
I love that. No, I think it's a decision every NAM has to make as far as like when I present, am I trying to make friends here or am I trying to identify opportunities? Of course, we're always trying to, but it's not about trying to find all the good news. It's just, this is what's going on, good or bad. And, don't shoot me. I'm just a messenger. But the fact is, if it's a opportunities type situation, don't shoot me. I'm just a messenger, but let's solve this. And I think a lot of salespeople are scared to present bad news, thinking, they're not going to like them versus, hey, they helped me solve a big problem.
sometimes my best conversations with my buyers have been the ones where I'll come to them saying, this isn't working for you as well as I thought it would. Let's pivot to this perhaps instead. Sometimes it's okay to give and say enough. And I think that's where you get their respect because they're like, wow, they really are looking out for my business. And, and I'll even say, but I'm seeing this with a competitive package. Maybe you should try this instead. And that's, I think, where it clicks and where it starts turning the corner for you with that relationship with the buyer.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think, sometimes I think us salespeople get a bad rap, but what I like about Fitco is that they want us to be kind of category managers. Look out for their entire category, not just where I've worked with some companies. Don't you dare bring up competition. Don't you dare do this unless you're on that category management side. If you're a salesperson, you sell.
Yeah.
Fitco isn't like that. You're a category manager and you're also a salesperson.
That's really old school, anymore today. If you can't collaborate or, recognize that competitive brands and, off topic, I really do think that craft beer had a lot to say about that when craft was exploding and buyers, you couldn't ignore the fact that like when local came onto the scene. So, but anyways.
Right.
Well, you just notice here in the takeaway box, when it kind of outlines how we would present this, you can see the question mark at the very end. That's the key. Because in this case here, the bottles are well developed. So there's a surplus of demand that they've captured. And if our suggestion is to sell bottles, we still have to point out, hey, this is what's going on. But can you see even more of a runway on how you can capture more business within the bottle, a package segment, if you will? I would imagine they would look at that and go, yeah, listen, if we're capturing more, why would we want to give that up? At a minimum, they would say, yeah, just keep it at 109. I don't want to give up anything. I would imagine would be the key. So makes sense?
Yep.
So as we pivot from opportunity and that whole gap, so let's just case here, we were trying to capture, that example we were using earlier with Stater Brothers. It had like about a 1.5 or what I think 1.45 average, like the average share, the revenue of one share point was about 1.45 million. And so let's say in this example, through our collaboration, they came back and said, you know what, we really love to get a half a share, maybe $700,000, $725,000 of additional business to whatever segment, FMBs, craft, bottles, whatever. That's what we're trying to solve for. So as we start to think about, in this example here, as we start to tell the story, it should be extremely focused against, hey, your gap that you want to close is 125,000. That's the what. And we've looked at your assortment. We've identified some SKUs you can bring in, some SKUs you can reduce. And when you do the math, you're looking at a little over 200,000 potential revenue, capturing 28%. It should be that crystal clear. Because I think to your point, Jim, a 6-year-old can understand that.
Mhm.
But, you know, but the question is, you know, how often are buyers seeing this? You know, we've done a lot of research, and the research suggests that a lot of salespeople aren't doing it this way. You know, they're almost like their analysis and opportunity identification is like one section, and then when they start selling, it's completely a different section. They're not tying them back together.
You talk about this in terms of story, you know, why, what, how things are going on. And there's a lot of analogies that can be drawn from it, just from conceptually. I mean, if you think about, you know, a recipe, you know, you need heat, you need this, that, but the ingredients sometimes are different in order, depending on what it is that you want to make. Maybe this isn't the best analogy as I'm listening to myself say it. But the point is this. I think that one issue that we face in this industry is what we're doing in terms of providing guidance and training and assistance to help people become more effective at selling is you have identified processes, and within those processes, steps, and within those steps, techniques. So if you break it down in terms of the presentation part of this, you know, the process, you've gotten to the point in the process where you are now presenting. And if we can provide more guidance in the area of simplifying the presentation part of it, that's why I said that other chart where it was very clear, if you inserted boxes. And to me, I think that we could be of value in helping with key accounts is if we were to develop some type of a template that we could just say, hey, look, if you just, even as you're preparing it, you're just filling in these boxes of information, then that could be helpful. And then we can, you know, people can become more repetitive in the way they see and present. Does that make sense?
Really?
Yeah.
Makes total sense. No, I like that.
Star?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I would say star. Yeah.
Right.
A big blue,
Shiny
not a green star, but a blue star.
a metallic blue star.
And I don't know about you, Matt, but those sales call plans that we have, sometimes those take longer to put together than our actual presentation. And seriously, and I get very, very frustrated.
That's yes.
I sit there and say, I could have had my presentation done by the time it took me. And I'll be honest with you, the last couple of plans I've done, I'll do my presentation and then fill out the sales call plan.
But likewise, and that sort of led me to my comment earlier, because I feel like it's pretty disjointed, and some of the data is useful, but the format is not. And
Right.
if we can tie that closer to, you know, to the way our presentations look, the way some of the Fox selling system data looks, that would be a lot more efficient.
I think so too. And
I hate that term. It's a poorly designed I understand the
Yeah.
intentions. Yes.
no, I like the concept of it because it does. It gives you that, okay, I know what I generically, you know, over top line, I know what I want to have that conversation, what it looks like. But this helps you kind of like pinpoint, because let's face it, you only get maybe 1 to 3 topics time to talk about. But it would be nice if we could take some of those steps from Tom Fox, put that on the sales call plan. And it's kind of like what Tom was saying, you know, sounds like there's an opportunity here to collaborate.
I totally agree. That's yes.
Yeah.
Has there been conversation with this individual about what we're doing?
I don't know. That's why I thought that
I don't
talking
think
to Kevin or Ben would be, you know, I know you guys have regular check-ins with Kevin and Ben around this, so maybe that's a point of discussion next time, because I think that, you know, doing these things is like parallel paths makes no sense.
Right.
When we could be a lot more efficient.
Sure, the intention is not to have it be administratively overburdensome, for sure.
Exactly. And it's not like, oh, let's see how we can, you know, take up all their time today. It's not, you know, anything like that. It's just make sure you're focused in your asks, and it does. And And where it really helps me too is like, we'll fill that out and then hand it to our analytical team. This is what I need from you and prep for my meeting. So in that regard, it does help us internally make sure we're all on the same page.
You can, I can't. I can never give it to them because they have looked at it and help me. So I always skip that section.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, if there's a way we can collaborate, and it would be so much easier, and I would embrace it so much better if it would only take 15 minutes. But honestly, I've spent up to 2 hours.
I agree. I agree that sometimes takes as longer than the presentation. And
Yeah.
Is that something that you keep in Karma after you create it, or just it sits on its own?
we have, it's like an Excel or is it Excel or Word? What format is it?
I think it's Excel.
Yeah, so it's not very user friendly. It's in Excel, but yet it's not your writing, right? And it's in Excel. So even that is sort of lacking. It's hard to populate the fields properly. And I think it would be useful for people, maybe for some people to, articulate their thoughts and it would be nice. It would be a useful outline for somebody who doesn't know what they're trying to present. But I feel like most of us, sounds like Tracy is as well, we know what we want to present, and it's very inefficient and duplicative, redundant efforts. So I don't know.
Yeah, we got to get a chance to see that, because I'd like to see how it aligns with SMART goal planning. It sounds pretty similar, but
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I can certainly send you a copy after our
that'd be great. That'd be great.
And then, yeah, what our team, what Kevin does for us is we house them on our SharePoint, and then he'll go in there. We'll also send it to him directly before, ahead of a meeting. So like when I had my new item presentations, I would send it ahead to both Ben and to Kevin, so they knew. So I wasn't necessarily sending them the entire presentation, but this is what we're chasing for this meeting. So, and then they'll share the best ones, or they'll share the bigger accounts with our sales VP. So that's how it's being used internally right now. But I think it has so much more potential to be just that. It's something we can involve our marketing managers with. Yeah.
There's always a fine line between overburden, getting someone prepared properly,
Right.
but not burdening them with administrative stuff that is not all that helpful. So
started using it, like I think it was introduced to us in February, March. They really came on strong over the summer. So I think it's just now that people are starting to use it more, we're starting to voice those opinions a little bit more. So.
That's good. Yeah, if you want to have influence, you got to expose people to what needs to be altered. I give you credit. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just mindlessly complaining about something that won't ever get changed. So I applaud that. So we talked.
The NAMs at Miller Coors needed that to kickstart their presentations, unlike us.
That's funny. We talk a lot about the data, and we talk a lot about the right way to collaborate, and it's all important stuff. But the last thing I really want to talk about would be just our overall approach when we're presenting, and what elements of impact really matter. So you may have all seen this before. So you're nodding your head, Matt. So which one of these three is the most impactful?
Let's see. I remember we talked about this.
Because verbal is the words you say. Vocal is how you say the words. Visual is how you look when you say the words.
And if I'm not mistaken, maybe this was a trick question because it's all three at varying levels.
You add them up, it equals 100. Yep. But they're not all created. They're not 33, 33, 33.
I'm going to say vocal impact.
Yeah.
Vocal, very important, but not the most important.
Really?
Nope. The words you say only have 7% of the impact. The vote, how you say the words, is over indexed. It's more than 33. So 38 means it's really important, but that leaves 55 for visual. So even if you're doing, isn't that fascinating?
That's shocking to me.
Well, it is something that when I saw it for the first time, it really, it had me shaking my head going, I don't get this. But the more I thought about it, that, boy, you look at all the great speakers and you say, okay, what elements of how you present have impact? And these bullet points, where are these bullet points? Are they falling in with verbal, vocal, or visual? There's no verbal on here at all.
Mhm.
But I will tell you this, the verbal, I believe, if you have such good command of what you're going to present, it's going to give you permission to be very aggressive vocally and visually. That, and I think especially, and I'm obviously having to not talk as loudly as I was earlier, but I do know that when I present virtually, I do kind of get my game face on, thinking, because I'm not in person and I can't grab them in person. How do you grab someone virtually? It's not as easy to do, but I do think that the more expressive we can be, the more, because listen, look at, people can check out virtually. They can turn their camera off. Hopefully they don't do that. But even if they have their camera on, do we really know if they're paying attention? The more aggressive we can be vocally and visually, and I do think that makes a difference. And Jim, we've gotten feedback from a lot of our clients over the last, almost 2 years now, 20 months, saying that the way we have done the virtual training has been, more than good enough. It's not as good, but it's good enough. And I think a lot of it is because we take this part of it really seriously. We're like, we got to be more aggressive than we ever would be in person. And I would want all of you to kind of look at that in the same way and give yourself permission, because of the, if you know the words you're going to say, which is only 7%, but if you know it so well, that should give you permission to take some risks that you might not normally take, because if we can present it in a little bit more of an aggressive way, the payoff is there for us. I mean, when you look at the surprise, either one of you, kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
It does.
And the vocal is critical too. I mean, I think you both pick vocal, and vocal, we know how important that is. I feel like I got like someone's hands around my neck right now because I can't talk as loudly as I want to.
Some of this almost overlaps with vocal, and that's why because to me, the vocal, whether it's the enthusiasm and energy and emotion, that to me is vocal.
No doubt.
I'll never forget one of the first presentations I did with FIFCO in front of distributors. And after the meeting, one of my coworkers came up to me and he's like, "You got to tone it down." And I'm like, "Why? We're selling beer. Why shouldn't we be up here jumping up and down and being excited? I mean, if you're not passionate about what you're doing and what you're selling, then why are you here? Honestly,
Yeah.
I don't, and it's, I don't want to be sitting across from the buyer going, and that's not me, It's like, yeah, sometimes I do have to tone it down, but it's like, my God, we're selling beer. How, this is great.
That's been the running joke for 13 years now in the company about how loud I am and how, passionate I am. That's just, yeah.
But that's going to be a lot more memorable than the person who's not passionate.
Yeah.
And I think that's your point, Tracy. It's like, we're trying to have an impression made, and the words that you say are going to have some impact, but it's, boy, the more aggressive we can be, that's what they're going to remember. Especially if you think about like that initial quote, like hitting that with the pile driver, hitting that whack, whack, whack.
I love that. I wrote it down. I love that.
Yeah.
But it's true. Yeah.
It is true. Because that's going to make a difference. That is going to make a difference. And people, that will be remembered versus the meek, the soft, the not confident, not passionate. I think it's key. So.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Jimmy, Shawnee?
Point to Sean.
No, I enjoy this topic, and I didn't jump in too much today, but I think, at the end of the day, for me, it's about collaboration. I think the big piece that you always mention, Tom, is it's not as much about, hey, this is what I think. but it's getting confirmation and asking them, is this also what you think? Or what are your thoughts on that? To really understand, because even though you might think something is compelling, if you don't get their insight on it, it's really in any industry. If you're selling anything, we might go through a demo for someone that's interested in getting access to the Fox selling system. But if we go through the whole demo and don't check in with them, or hey, what are your thoughts, or how is this different than you're doing things today, or could you see this being valuable for certain members of the team? Because if their answers are no to that, it's okay, well, now I need to pivot, or maybe ask why, or figure out maybe if there's another, solution that could make more sense for them. Just really collaboration, I think, is a big piece about delivering presentations or delivering demos or whatever it is.
Yeah. You know who's a great speaker, much as I hate to admit it? Mel Tucker. He's good. He's a way better speaker than Jim Harbaugh. I can tell you that right now.
I don't know about
Way
that.
better.
I'm going to go on mute.
I'm not so sure about that.
I mean, yeah.
Hey,
I
listen,
didn't say who the better coach was. I just said, yeah.
Hey, look at us.
he's a great coach. I will give him that.
Oh, boy.
He's a great coach.
Sean's in a house divided.
Yeah. So, Tom, this slide always astounds me too. The one that your last slide that you showed about the visual.
Yeah.
Thing. But it never fails. I've said this multiple times when we do these live presentations, is that there's always something, no matter how many times I've sat in with one of your training, where I get something out of it new that I hadn't gotten before. And except this one.
Thank you.
No, I'm joking. Listen, are you being escorted out? I mean, do we need to call in your defense? I mean, are you going to need bail? What's going on?
I'm just in the wrong room. There's like some open doors and some guys playing cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
I'm in a meeting room, and there's apparently other meetings going on.
You should just go down and pull a chair right up to the table with the guy and say, hey, count me in, deal me in. Boys,
I'm a passionate card player.
yeah.
Anyway, well, always a pleasure, everybody. If there's nothing else, Matt, Tracy, any final thoughts from either of you? I appreciate you jumping on. Hopefully you've got this energy to be as passionate, more passionate. Get out of your comfort zone. Get out.
You found the two people on the team that's probably the least issue.
Cool.
Other things I can learn, that's probably the one.
Well, keep doing it. And then if nothing else, have it validate that
Where's
you're doing the right thing.
again for downloading this presentation? Is it downloadable off the site, or is it?
I think so.
I don't know if it is. I'm not sure, Matt, if you can download it, but it will be up probably by Monday in the resources section of the site. So if you go to resources, when you click on the button for resources, and then there's a drop-down menu from there, hit key account leader, and then it'll open up another resource box, and then you can see video live training, and it's there.
Okay, yeah.
But I'll check on that, whether or not it's downloadable.
I like to print things out old school and have a physical.
Oh, you're talking about the deck itself,
Yeah.
not necessarily the recording. Oh, Tom, gee, I don't know.
I just sent it to him. Send it to both of them.
Yeah,
There's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, there is.
Well, yeah, and there's more. There's more to it too.
I
So
was only able to write down so much of it, so that's why I want to be able to print it out.
All right.
Always.
we got you covered.
Yeah, always provide access. So yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm going to reach out to Kevin and say, you need to, if there's one presentation everybody watches, it's this one.
Cool.
This is a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
He
Patients,
sent
people are sick and everything else, so.
he sent a
agencies
note.
are going on too, so,
He sent a note saying he and several others probably wouldn't be able to make it today. So anyway, unfortunate, because I was looking forward to having a new picture of him for him.
oh, next time.
Annual planning gets in the way.
Oh, yeah.
Just got back from one of those, so yeah, I literally was driving back to Buffalo from West Virginia all day yesterday, and just so I could be here doing this. So.
Cool. Well, thanks.
That's commitment.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Matt, for jumping on. Jim and Sean,
Likewise.
thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Tracy, have a good trip. And
Yeah.
enjoy your time in Arizona.
You bet. I'll do my best. Thank
Yep,
you.
and go blue.
Oh, oh.
Go green, right?